In this video, we're going to be discussing the bottom turn. Hi, my name is Jordy. I'm the founder of The Independent Surfer. I've been surf instructing for over 10 years. And in 2020, we put out some amazing surf tips that helped our Instagram grow to over 160,000 subscribers in just about less than 3 months. Now, we're putting together all those best tips and giving you the secrets behind rapid surf progression, so stay tuned to the series. What is a bottom turn? So it's really simple. A bottom turn is just any turn that you're doing where you're more or less turning away from the breaking part of the wave. Now I know it says bottom turn, so you're thinking that every turn you do has to be at the bottom of the wave, but it's not necessarily true. It's really just referring to any turn that makes you go away from the breaking part of the wave towards the shoulder. After that, any top turn is actually a turn that kind of takes you back towards or back, either back down the wave that's done at the top of the wave, or a turn that could also be done out towards the shoulder, but then it's just bringing you back towards the breaking part of the wave. So again, super simple. Bottom turn, a turn that you do to set up your top turn, or turn that you do to go away from the breaking part of the wave, or go from the bottom up to the top. So it can mean any of those things. The next question is like, why is it so important? Like, why do I need to do a bottom turn? When you surf a wave, it moves in a specific direction. In this case, this wave is breaking to the right. We always talk about wave direction from the surfer's perspective. So even though to me or to you as we're looking at this specific drawing, even though it looks like it's breaking to the left, because the surfer is paddling in, we're talking about their perspective, so we have to turn it around. If this surfer didn't commit a bottom turn, essentially just stood up and went straight, what would happen is they go straight and the wave would continue in this direction, and the surfer would end up in this whitewater turbulent area standing on the board, and they wouldn't be able to surf the wave in any way, shape, or form. So in order to keep on the wave, they absolutely have to commit a bottom turn to end up going in that direction. The type of bottom turn you do is defined by, one, what the wave will allow you to do, and two, what you aim to do with the next section. So you always need to be a little bit ahead when you're thinking about your bottom turn, because your bottom turn isn't just this random thing that you're going to do. It's really what's going to allow you to commit to a top turn. Bear with me here, I'll just show you some examples. So when you surf a wave, there's different lines that you can take. You can either choose to stand up and go in this direction really quickly, or you can choose to drop down to the bottom of the wave and lose a bit of speed for a specific reason to go back up towards the top of the wave. This is really just defined by what this top line of the wave is doing. So you have to pay a lot of attention to that top line. It'll tell you whether or not you need to go down in this direction really quickly, or if you can commit a deeper bottom turn and go straight for the first little bit instead. But it's important to note that going straight and taking a line like this and doing a bottom turn in this situation is much more difficult to achieve than it is to get up and pump down the line and move in that direction. If you want to know more and you want to understand this even further, come and join us at one of our retreats. We're going to be in Nicaragua next year. Our goal is to host some really incredible retreats around the whole world. So if you guys are interested in really improving your surfing, come and join us in paradise. Back to the bottom turn. Some things to understand before we get into this is that your board is designed to turn. That's why these rails are kind of rounded like this. The more rounded the rails are, the easier the board is to turn. The more parallel the rails are, the slightly harder it is to turn. But the caveat is that more parallel rails like this one, it allows for more speed, and the opposite effect of that, the more rounded the rails are, the slower you're going to go, more or less. But the easier the board is going to be to turn. So most boards will have some combination of an area where the rails are kind of close to parallel, and then also areas where the rails are rounded. And depending on how far forward you make that round or how far back will also affect the performance of a surfboard. So, but what I'm getting at here is that your rails are already rounded so that it will help you turn the board. So essentially all that you need to do is when you're paddling, let's say you're catching a wave, this is the back of the board, front, oh that's a terrible board. Let's say this is your surfboard and you're paddling into a wave and you want to go to this direction. Essentially all you really have to do to get the board to turn is apply weight to this rail. Because of the board's curved outline, it's meant to turn to the direction that you apply the weight, basically. So if I apply the weight to the left, I'm going to go to the left. If I apply the weight to the right, I'm going to go to the right. Now, there's obviously a specific way that you're supposed to apply this pressure, and that's really what we're going to get into. When you do catch a wave and stand up and start to apply this weight, you need to hold your upper body in a specific manner. Now, this is an intermediate version of the bottom turn, but it's a good example of how you need to hold your body in order to complete the bottom turn. When you lean over onto the rail, it's going to tip your weight into one side, more or less like that. You can see how the weight is tipped. He's got more weight on this rail than he does on that rail. Now, when he is doing that, it's super important to hold his upper body in a specific way, because if he leans over onto the rail and tips the weight here, if he's just leaning back onto his heels, it's going to be really easy for him to fall over, especially if he doesn't have any experience with that feeling. It might take some time for you to get comfortable with this. So in order to combat that, in order to help him stay stable on the board, the first thing that you have to pay attention to is the hands. So each hand over each rail. And that's going to help you balance. So, as you wait on one side, you can stick out your other arm to counterweight. And as you wait on the other side, you can stick your arm out to counterweight. You're kind of getting this like balance or outrigger of a canoe, or so on and so forth. Or imagine somebody walking a slack line. Whenever they're walking, they're using their arms to help themselves balance. And it's the same thing in surfing. As you're tipping onto the rail, you need to use your arms to help you keep balance. If you have both hands over the same rail, it's going to be really hard to do that, because you're weighting with your butt and weighting with your head instead of weighting with your arms and shoulders. So very common in this situation is for this hand to actually be over this rail. And that's a really bad initiation of the bottom turn, because you're going to have too much weight over one side. You're going to be weighting with your butt instead of weighting by dropping your shoulders down a little bit more. The hands and the upper body doesn't only create the balancing aspect, but it also creates momentum to help you get the board to turn. I want you to think about somebody throwing a discus, right? When they throw a discus, they're going to spin around a couple times to create some momentum in order for them to, and then they're going to throw the discus. It's kind of the same with the bottom turn. You're not going to spin around, but you're going to use that pendulum swing of your arm to help create a bit of momentum. So what do I mean by that? You're going to watch as he moves this arm up and around up towards the top of the wave, and this arm is also going to come around, rotating through the shoulders, but using the arms to help him get up towards the top of the wave. So there we go. That's the first movement right here. So we can notice this arm, it's going to open up to go towards the top of the wave as he's at the bottom of the wave here. There we go. There it is right there. So he's setting himself into that compressed position, nice and compressed, leaning on the rail and opening this arm up to help his board go in that direction. It's really simple. You just have to open that arm up, and it's going to help you keep the shoulders nice and square and have your board go in that direction. Turning the surfboard doesn't happen with the feet and the legs. It starts with offsetting your weight from the upper body, using your upper body to help you turn the board, and then offsetting the weight onto the fins and having the board onto the fins and onto the rail, have the board to then kind of take that same momentum. He's opened his shoulders. The board has translated the movement. It's going in that direction. And in this situation right now, you can actually see how he's starting to move his back arm in the opposite direction. So watch how this hand goes back behind him like this as he's changing his line. So let's watch. And there it moves right there. All right, and again, starting from that nice central compressed position, each hand over each rail here. He's nice and compressed in his knee. Ideally, he'd be looking up here, but that's okay. He's continuing. Now you can see how offsetting the weight, he's not even moving his upper body much, but he's offsetting the weight with his heels. And in order for him to do that without falling over, he's keeping each hand more or less over each rail. Nice low position. And again, starting to open the body up. Bring this arm across to have his board go up to the top of the wave. And board's going up. And then you can see right here, again, as he's already brought this up, he's opening his shoulders. Now the next movement that he's going to have to do before he gets to the top of the wave is close his shoulders back down to the bottom of the wave and bring this arm back across that way. That arm goes behind him. And that's the pendulum to help him get his board back down. So again, I think it's in the feet, but watch, offsetting the weight with the upper body. We'll go super slow on this one. And there we go, the arm goes back around, this arm comes forward across, arm swap rails, and he's doing his top turn. He could have held this turn a little longer. What would have helped him a bit more is to just look in that direction. Keep the weight like this. Keep this hand over here. Keep that hand over there. Because now what's happening is he's having this like little hand creep over this side of the rail. And that hand creep over this side of the rail means that if he tries to put his chest even further and more weight onto this side of the rail, that when he puts the weight on that side of the rail, because he doesn't have anything counterbalancing on this side, it can make it really easy for him to put too much weight and have his whole chest and body fall over there. Okay, especially if he looks down. But if he looks across here, keeps this hand behind him to use that as a pendulum to rotate, create more momentum, he'd be able to do even more of a turn back towards the whitewater. But you can see his momentum is kept down the line. When you're doing the bottom turn, it's so important for you to manage your speed. Imagine you're riding a bike and you're going in a specific direction. You're going as fast as you can. And now you come to a corner. So you're riding a bike and there's a 90-degree corner ahead of you. Do you think that you can turn that corner when you're going as fast as you can? Probably not. What's going to probably happen in that case is you'll slide out. And you won't be able to make the corner. But if you slow down to a specific speed that's suitable to make the corner, you can start to lean over a little bit and your bike will round the corner just fine. The opposite of that would be to have no speed at all. If you ever try to sit on a bicycle without any speed, it's pretty hard to keep balance. So it's the same concept in surfing, exactly the same principle. You're rounding these corners, but if you have too much speed and you're not applying weight to the right part of the board, then it's going to be really difficult for you to get around that corner. You're going to either overshoot it because you've got too much speed or undershoot it because you have too little speed. So doing your bottom turn is all about speed management. But how do you do that? So when we think about the bottom turn, we have to also understand how we get speed on a wave. So there's two main factors. The first one is obviously the wave's water displacement moving in towards the beach. That's a wall of water that moves in towards the beach, and that's giving you some power momentum. The other force that's kind of acting on you is gravity. So when you stand up and you go down a wave, you're going to accelerate down it and go faster and faster the longer you go down the wave. So that's why surfing a bigger wave, not only the amount of power that it has in behind it, but surfing a bigger wave, you get more speed than surfing a smaller wave because of how much, one, obviously the power and size of the wave, but two, also the acceleration, the amount of time that it takes for you to get to the bottom. The longer it takes for you to get to the bottom, the faster you're going to go. That's just how gravity works. So understanding those two factors, you need to understand that if a wave is really big and you're going down towards the bottom of the wave, at some point here, you're actually going to gain too much speed. And in that case, you actually need to spend time in that bottom trough area to lose enough speed to make a high enough degree of turn at the bottom of the wave to get up towards the top of the wave. Now, using this concept, you can start to understand how when you go to the bottom, you can change your degree a lot. You know, in this case, a full 180 degrees. And depending on how much speed you have, will determine how long you'll take to do that, as well as how big the wave is. So all these factors will come into play. A bigger wave, you need like kind of more drawn out bottom turns because you need to wipe off more speed. Whereas a smaller wave, you're going to be trying to get that bottom turn in much quicker because you're not actually getting that much speed by dropping down towards the bottom. So, you know, in that case, small waves, you kind of have to speed generate more. And big waves, you're actually kind of like trying to slow yourself down a little bit more by going to the bottom of the wave. But on small waves, and it doesn't matter whatever wave you go on, if your trajectory is down, or your momentum is down the line most of the time, and you're never going to the bottom of the wave, you're never actually going to lose enough speed to get a really vertical or a really deep bottom turn in, a deep enough bottom turn for you to do a good enough top turn. Because remember, your bottom turn defines the type of top turn that you do. If your bottom turn looks like this, your top turn is going to look like that. If your bottom turn looks like this, the top turn is going to look like that, and so on and so forth. So and that's just because of how you carry speed on the wave. So just remember, if you feel like your surfing is much like Carl's, where it's kind of lateral down the line, it's just because you're not dropping down to the bottom enough to lose enough speed to get your board to point back up high enough to the top of the wave. But when you do this, it's so difficult because you have to like commit fully to leaning onto the rail. And if you're not used to how the board leans onto the rail, maybe you don't surf often enough, you haven't had that experience, or maybe, you know, the board, you're chopping and changing boards, then you're not going to be able to do that. And your form has to be perfect to be able to do that. So also psychologically, everybody wants to surf the wave in this direction and end up finishing the wave, but that hinders your performance because you're not committing to each section as it presents itself. So if you want to get a better bottom turn in, you need to keep each hand over each rail. You need to offset your weight to one side of the board. Stay compressed. Manage your speed, not go too fast, not go too slow. And know that you will never do a really good top turn unless you change your line to go to the bottom of the wave in order to go up to the top. Look guys, there's so much more that we can go into with this video. I've gone off on so many tangents. It's hard for me to, just keep all of it intact. But